Okay. As soon as Paula gets off the phone.
Yeah, I just want to put it on, I just want to mute it.
Okay. Okay. Am I ready? Okay. Is this on? I guess so. Okay. So we're calling to order the December 21st meeting of the Planning Commission. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you will rise, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so the clerk will do the roll call now.
Tal Jensen.
Hi.
Sharon Watts.
Present.
Paula Bosell.
Here.
Connie Taylor.
Here.
And June Jones is excused.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is citizen communication for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to do this? Okay. And that might be helpful.
It's just the signage. You can tell them whether or not they want to.
Okay. So, seeing that there is no one who wants, or you do? Okay.
Items not on the agenda. I didn't see any items on the agenda.
That you want. Not much on it.
Thank you, sir.
I went on the city...
Please identify yourself and where you live.
Oh, sure. Bill Dunlap, 110 South Beacon Road. I went on the city website today to discover just what it is that your mission was as Planning Commission members. And on the website it says the Planning Commission conducts public hearings related to the comprehensive plan and its implementation, including zoning and subdivision regulations. The Planning Commission also reviews and makes recommendations to the City Council on the adoption and enforcement of coordinated plans and regulations for the physical development of the city. The Planning Commission also reviews and provides recommendations on certain projects in the city, such as conditional use permits and subdivisions. At the public hearing on November 30th, 2017, it was my observation that the Planning Commission did not perform due diligence in representing the citizens of Woodland. It's my understanding that it's the duty of the Planning Commission to evaluate proponent and opponent testimony before a final decision is made. Most, if not all, of the questions from the public have been left unanswered, and I believe the City Planning Commission should retract its recommendation to the City Council until the questions and studies posed by citizens have been answered in writing. Why bother having a public hearing if the citizens' concerns are ignored? Is there a reason to change the city's comprehensive plan so expeditiously? What are the tax consequences to the city for this property being zoned or rezoned, light industrial versus high-density residential? What will be the impact on safety, including law enforcement, fire, and pedestrian traffic, including a safe walking route for children walking to school? I believe the City Planning Commission should retract its recommendation to the City Council of rezoning the property at 1350 Glenwood Street from light industrial to high-density residential residential until due diligence has been performed by the Planning Commission and opposition testimony is fully addressed. Looking at the big picture, this is more than the rezoning of one lot from light industrial to high residential housing. Has the Woodland Planning Commission provided the City Council with a written explanation of the reasons to change the comprehensive plan? And what are the time limits for this process? And if you were to vote on whether or not to change the comprehensive plan, I'd like to know whether or not you bring the other two members back in for a vote, since that's actually a different issue than rezoning one particular lot. So those are my questions and my recommendation. I think that you haven't done your homework, and you need to do that before you make a recommendation to the City Council. Thank you.
So it's my understanding that this is going to the City Council next month, in January sometime. If they feel we haven't done due diligence, they will probably kick it back to us. That's happened before, that they send it back to us.
If you haven't,
come up to the microphone, please.
We, as the public, have respectfully asked you some questions, such as the traffic impact and how that's going to be reconciled. I don't think any additional housing, personally, should be added to the city until you solve some of the problems that we already have. Traffic backs up onto the freeway right now at night. That's a hazard. Sooner or later, somebody's going to get hurt, possibly killed. And we need to fix that problem before we add any more housing to the city. And that's an immediate problem. And I don't know whether that was part of your comprehensive plan, but I think I'd be giving things like that consideration before I'd be paying attention to rezoning one particular lot.
Yes, and you have your opinion, and it's duly noted. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to items not on the agenda?
My name is Bill Malloy, and I will reiterate everything he said is absolutely right. But there's another issue that hasn't been addressed in anywhere I can see, and I don't know if the city has a stipulation for that, but you put another 70 families in that neighborhood, and there are no parks, no place to recreate. Right now, kids recreate in that lot. That's not a good thing, but that's where they go. People walk their dogs in there. Now they're going to be they're on the street, in the traffic, with the trucks. There's no place for children. That is going to blow back on the city. The city's going to have to come up with some place, build someplace, buy someplace for those children to play. Otherwise, what's going to happen? Somebody's going to get hurt. But in most cities and most municipalities, there has to be a certain amount of area left for parks, recreation, play, whatever, going for a walk. There's nothing there, and you're putting 70 more families, 70 families, 1.5 cars a person, that's over 100 cars that you're going to put on those streets along with those children, those families. They're not going to be single people with one car living in there. They're going to be family. They're going to have kids. They're going to have teenage kids, kids that drive, 2 or 3 cars to a family. That's also, I don't think the long-term repercussions of this were thought out. It's going to cost the city a lot of money in the long run to put that in there. It's not just a matter of signing a paper, okay, we can rezone it, let them build whatever they want, and we'll deal with it later. We can't do that. We've already done that once across the street. We can't do it again here. It's a huge mistake. We don't correct mistakes. We can't do the same thing twice and think there's going to be a different outcome. It's going to be the same outcome as it was the other one. And it is not working. This won't work either. You have to think further out. We're thinking too close to, right now, okay, this sounds all good. In their plan, they said it would not obstruct any other housing. Lilac, or not Lilac Garden, but that Tulip Valley will never see daylight again. You put a 30-foot wall alongside that fence, the sun will never shine in that yard. The houses on Beechwood Street, they claim that housing will be sited on 3 sides, Beechwood, Glenwood, and Columbia. It won't side Beechwood. There's 2 houses on Beechwood Street between that apartment and the street. Those houses will never see daylight. There's no answers for any of this. There's just no upside for the city that I can see.
Okay. Well, I would encourage you to take your concerns to the city council when they
I will.
Have this before them.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake, and I think we need to rectify it before it gets too far gone.
Well,
Thank you.
as I say, take your concerns to the city council, please. Anyone else?
Dave Lester, 1333 Glenwood. Were you aware that the YouTube recording, the official recording of this meeting was cut off before it finished last week?
I noticed that as well.
That was my error, sir.
Excuse me?
That was my mistake. I
Is there any
apologize.
other official recording?
No, sir, there is not. I'm
So
sorry.
the public disclosure law has been broken in that case.
That's not true. You're not required by state law to record.
I'll find out. So
Well,
I would,
there is a tape of it, right? No, there's no audio.
It's gone.
Okay.
so the final decision was not recorded, as was some of the testimony that was missed. So I would ask that the Planning Commission pay attention to details and in the future assure that doesn't happen. And I would also ask that everyone speak up instead of talking like this, which makes it very hard to hear. I am hard of hearing anyway.
Well,
and it's
you
very
could probably be a little
difficult
closer
to
to the mic.
understand.
You could probably be a little closer to the microphone yourself, because
Thank
you
you.
are rather soft-spoken, too.
Mr. Lester, just to let you know, that was my first time doing a meeting by myself, and I made an error. I thought I was fixing a problem that I saw. I apologize for that. And now I've learned how to do it without cutting it off.
Got minutes.
Is there anyone else?
Oh, go ahead.
My name is Jim Stock. I bought my house on that 669 Beechwood Street in 1991. Have lived there ever since. I've seen a lot of changes, and particularly since Lilac Place has come into existence. The increased traffic, the increased pedestrian traffic up and down our street. Most of my issues have already been addressed, so I won't repeat them. The other day I was sitting in my chair, and a motion caught my attention out my front window, and there was a man in the middle of my front yard. And my property is posted. I got up, and by the time I got out to the front of the house, that guy was around by my car, between my car and my boat. I had to go out and have words with him, but I only see this. He said he was chasing his dog, which was loose and not on a leash. I see more and more of this. I don't see it from him anymore. But the people at Lilac Place have many dogs, and they take those dogs right across the street to this piece of property that you're wanting to rezone and build on. Well, then we're going to have these multi-unit buildings facing each other. Where's those dogs going to go? There is no, the gentleman talked about land for recreational use. What about use for these dogs. And it's not good finding them in your front yard. I used to be able to look out my front window and watch Green Mountain. I can't see it anymore. All I see is this doggone big building. I'd be curious if any of you folks lived anywhere in that area to get an idea of what we're dealing with the traffic situation right now. Those who go out Columbia Street not only deal with Safeway traffic and those businesses in there, but the truck traffic that comes around that route. You can sit in line there and wait forever to get out onto the frontage road, and those that don't go that way are wise enough to come around Beechwood. And that affects all of us in that area, on Glenwood, Beechwood. I just don't think this idea has been thought out. And I think if you folks lived in the area, you'd already have a grasp of what we're trying to point out. This is a very bad plan. This is not effective planning. I just hope you reconsider. Thank you very much.
Again, I would urge you to go to the city council meeting. So, Mr. Perry?
I guess you saw me flinch a while ago. You probably figured I might get up and say something tonight, huh? I'll tell you what, I've gone, Scott Perry, 180 South Pekin Road. I've thought about this an awful lot, and I know you all realize that we're awfully disappointed after the testimony that was given that you made the decision you did, but I think I understand it. I decided not to dwell on that, but wanted you to understand that I believe the Planning Commission is probably the most important of the committees devoted to the future of Woodland. For this reason, I was disappointed when a month or so ago it was mentioned none of you had planned meetings with the City Council. I can't imagine planning the future of the city without a close relationship with the City Council. While considering process, I made a public information request for the DRC report and staff recommendation required by the Woodland Municipal Code 19.08.30, which lists the process for this type of change before the Planning Commission dockets the request. None has been provided. Have you, it wasn't provided
Request for a joint meeting?
after my request? It
The
wasn't.
mayor has initiated the process of setting up there is a joint.
I'm sorry.
The mayor has set up a joint meeting. It's really the council's place to do that. And the mayor has set up a joint meeting with the city council and the planning commission.
You'll find there's 3 requirements to making this type of a change. The first one is for the
Which type of change, sorry?
any kind of land change
Oh, okay.
of this nature. And you might refer to 19.08.30. It's very, very specific. And the first is that it be, go through the DRC, which is, I forgot the name of that committee. But anyway, help me out with that one.
It's just DRC. It's Development Review Committee.
Anyway, which includes most of the people that would have been involved in the preliminary process, and they are to provide the Planning Commission with their recommendation along with the staff recommendation, at which time then you would go ahead and set up the, whether or not you're going to docket it and so forth. And that step was, as far as I can tell, never done. I ask also for the pre-application conference, just what was the date of it, who attended it, and if there were some notes from it. Guess what? That hasn't shown up either. Brad, in one of his reports in November, said very specifically that he couldn't find the SEPA report. So basically, you had two commissioners that asked questions regarding the application process. I should always just read what I wrote. That's better. That questioned the application process as well as Amanda on the information, asked her for information. It was lacking. Consequently, they asked to table the situation, and it was eventually tabled. There was a lot of controversy over a couple of signatures on petitions. As I recall, the petitions were passed out at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and people signed them supporting the Chamber's position and little more. Yet some of us make a big deal out of it. Amanda, and possibly others, raised this issue to discredit the commissioners that had questioned proper process and her lack of answers. This is evident in an email to Mr. Ealing the day after the July 20th meeting, where it is clear she is looking for a way to bypass the Planning Commission.
Excuse me, but we did have a couple of lawyers look at this and find that it was cause for recusal to having signed those petitions.
How did it come up and become such an issue? How many people signed that?
Well,
first of all, and many of the people...
All of those people that signed it weren't on the Planning Commission.
Neither were, at least one of them wasn't on the Planning Commission at the time they signed it either. People were simply saying the Chamber of Commerce had made a decision.
This is...
And they passed around the...
As far as I'm concerned, this has been settled.
Okay, this will all be discussed, as you say. I'm not talking about any of the things that others have, because they will come up at the city council meeting, which I'm sure will be interesting. Anyway, Amanda did bring it up, and I have an email, I have a number of emails, but anyway, in this particular one on that date, where it's obvious that she's trying to bypass the Planning Commission.
Amanda is no longer here. I mean, is this relevant?
I'm sorry?
Amanda is no longer the planner.
Okay, but how did we get to where we are today?
I don't think there was anything in
I came up here to read my statement, and if you're going to cross-examine me, I'd be more than happy to get into that type of a thing, but that's not what I'm prepared to do tonight.
How much longer is your statement? How much longer is your statement?
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
I've attended a lot of Planning Commission meetings in the past, but none was as embarrassing as the past couple. What changed? Dave Simpson resigned. I didn't always agree with him, but he was always prepared, gave people an opportunity to speak, asked great questions, listened, and could reference the appropriate code. I'm not saying he always followed process, but in the end, he explained his position and normally got agreement with little discussion. I believe you recommended the zoning to the city council because you felt it was a hot potato you were not capable of handling. We are expecting a new planner. The mayor and I believe the city council want to change the image of Woodland, and many of us believe it can be done, but we need to encourage people with experience and expertise to get involved. They won't if they experience meetings like the last couple. You had a long time when there was no one filling a vacancy on the commission. Then Paula was appointed, though she only had a month in residence within the city limits. But again, who pays attention to the process? Maybe it was because she's so well qualified. I challenge you to ask, are you qualified and experienced to address the challenges, support process, and or have you simply been like bobbleheads agreeing with Dave when he gave direction? Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
By the way, bobbleheads aren't bad.
Hello, my name is Jenny Wilson, and I live at 248 Raspberry Lane. I'd like to start off with a question to the commission. What were the positive aspects of voting approval for this?
I'm not really sure that this is I'm not really sure that that this is something that we need to get into at this point. The decision has been made.
Okay. So my main concern for building additional multifamily units in Woodland is the current road conditions and infrastructure. The city needs to focus on a better road system before increasing our population. Here are only a few of my concerns. I commute from Woodland to downtown Portland for work. My evening commute on the way home includes taking exit 21 to head towards Raspberry Park. And almost every day that the exit is backed up onto the freeway. I know Bill Dunlap also mentioned this, but if we're both mentioning it, I'm sure there's other concerns. Not only is it backing up onto the freeway, but when you take the exit, there's a lot of confusion on what lane you need to be in to go straight. And, people from Woodland or even outside of Woodland who come need to go straight. They take up kind of down the middle, take up both lanes, and then when they get to the very front of, the top by the signal, they're able to realize which lane they need to be in, and this also contributes to the back of it. There's a small little sign that you see to the right, a tiny little sign that says, right lane, right turn only. Well, if there's a large truck or a semi, you're not going to see it. This is just a simple example of the traffic issues that we have in Woodland. A second one, again, is so as I'm by commute, I'm heading west down Davidson. School gets out. When the primary and middle school get out, traffic is backed up from US Bank all the way to the Signal, and also from the Signal heading south to the freeway all the way to Safeway. It's a mess, and I'm not even going to the east side of town. I'm just stuck on the west side of town. Then when I take a left and I head down South Pekin to go to my neighborhood, there's Portco Packaging. Now, this is also an industrial and a residential area that we're talking about in this situation as well. Semis get confused on where to turn, so they stop in the middle of South Pekin, and then when they do find out where to turn, they have a hard time turning into that complex, and they back up traffic. And also, there are children walking from school at the same time because of the safe route to school where we canceled buses. It causes a lot of traffic issues. So I get back on my speech here. So the proposed zoning change of this light industrial area to high-density residential will add to these problems or duplicate these problems that were a result of poor planning. What I'm asking today is that we look at how we can improve and actually take action to improve our traffic before we continue to build in Woodland. So I ask that you do your job as a planning commission and rescind your recommendation to the city council. It is your responsibility to plan for resolving these problems rather than adding to them or creating new problems. This proposed zoning change is a big problem that we do not need. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Make this short.
Name again.
Jim Stock
Yeah,
again.
Thanks.
I forgot to mention, I'd like more advance notice about when this commission is meeting on the subject of this rezoning and building on Glenwood. In the past, Bill and I lived next door to each other. There were times I would get a notice, but not him, or him would get it and not me. One time I got a notice that said any comments I wanted to make pertaining to that issue had to be in by the very next day. I got it in. And then when the meeting was supposed to take place, that meeting was canceled. It was for 7 o'clock at night, and my cancellation, my mail didn't come till 6 o'clock that day. It was late. Can't you guys, give us a little bit more
Well,
time?
I have to say, it wasn't our choices to have the meetings canceled. And as far as notifications ahead of time, I'm not sure what's the process now. The department has been in a little bit of turmoil.
There's statutory requirements, and I would suspect that if you look at, I don't know what date you're talking about was canceled, but if you look at your postmark, it should have been at least 7 days prior to the cancellation.
I kept all my letters, all my envelopes.
I'm telling you, sir, that you can just do that. I mean, these are things that you can take and use to say, I didn't get enough notice, and the city can work to improve that. But there is statutory requirements for notice. And you can just work to make sure that that doesn't happen again. I can't fix what has happened in the past. Nobody here can fix what has happened in the past, but we can improve upon it in the future. And your city council and planning commissioner, those are the folks that make those rules.
This is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
If there is statutory requirements.
There is.
They weren't met in the instances
Right.
that I mentioned.
It's already in the code.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is it in the works to go by that code, follow the code and get the notice out?
The staff should be going by that code each and every time. Yes, sir.
All right.
When they process.
That's all I
applications.
asked. It's,
Well, point of information. It was my understanding that some of these notices were returned because you guys got boxes or you got a fair number returned.
We get some return. Sometimes it's for no forwarding address. Actually, I don't have the file with me tonight, but I have quite a few that are returned, and we can always go back and look through this. What the city relies on for mailing information out is the county assessor's records. So they look at the county assessor's records, and whoever the county sends their taxes to, that's the address we get. So sometimes, if you're not the property owner and you're a renter, you're not going to necessarily get notice. I'm not saying that you're not that case, but two things to think about in that regard. So I'm sorry that you didn't get notice, and I'm sorry that Bill didn't get notice one time or the other way around. They're supposed to take a 500-foot buffer or 300-foot, depending on the type of application, and send it to everybody there. If you're not within that, you're not going to get notice. So sometimes you have to rely on the newspaper, where there are 5 locations within the city, including the post office, where the agenda and things are posted, and you can just glance at those. And then in this instance, there was notice published in the newspaper once I came on. I the comprehensive plan is required to be posted in the newspaper. I don't know if that was done in the past. I simply don't know. I can't speak for what
And
happened
what
in the
paper
past.
would that be posted in?
The Reflector,
Okay, I do get the Reflector.
yeah. So it'd be in their legal ads. A lot of people don't read the legal ads, but if you read the legal ads, a lot of times the government stuff gets pushed back to the legal ads, and that's just where it is. I would just tell you that those are things you can appeal on, right? So you could appeal to the city council, or in this instance, the city council is the final decision maker. So if you don't like the decision for the city that the city council makes, and you want to assert that, well, I never got notice of it, so I didn't get a fair opportunity to be heard, then you can take that to court. But a court is going to say, okay, then what's our cure? Well, if you testified at the planning commission and you testified at city council, somehow you received notice. And that's not going to carry a lot of weight. So the whole idea behind due process is that you get an opportunity to be heard, and that the applicant gets an opportunity to present his case. The decision is made by the city council in this case, but in other cases that the planning commission hears, they hear those cases. So if you hear about it, even from your neighbors, as hearsay, I always tell people, don't use not getting notice as an excuse. If you have an opportunity to get up there and say something, then say it. It doesn't really, I mean, the courts look at that stuff and they say, I can look at a mailing label, I can look at the mailing list of all the envelopes that were sent out, and if your name is on there, the city did the best job that it could to get it out there. If it shows on there that it was returned for some reason, that's the post office returning it. It's not the city mailing it and then getting it back and saying, you know, we didn't mail it out.
I understand what you're saying, but I've also heard you say partial records are missing, things that you guys are obligated to do aren't getting done in totality. And those missing parts is messing the system up. You guys need to be thorough.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree.
Well, I meant to be brief. I'm sorry to take up so much of your time, but I felt it was important.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay. So the second thing here is citizen communication for items on the agenda, which I would prefer to take when we get to those items on the agenda. The next thing is the approval of minutes for July 20th. Could I have a motion and a second, and then we can talk about any problems with the minutes?
Sure. I move to approve the July 20th minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Tell and seconded by Paula to approve the July 20th minutes. Does anyone have any concerns with them, any corrections?
Madam Chair, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, and this is kind of a point of information, but when we look at page 5 of 17, it talks about the applicant, and then it talks about, in Brenda Frederickson's testimony, applicant responded that other properties are not as attractive as this particular location for their own various reasons. And, I mean, the tape says that they wanted this site specifically because it was more cost-effective and it had sewer and water readily available. And I think that's much more accurate than saying various reasons. So I would like to see the minutes amended to reflect what the applicant actually said.
Okay, so please say what you would like it to say. Give Janice the wording.
I would like it when it says applicant responded that other properties are not as attractive as this particular location because this location was most cost-effective for them because they had shovel-ready property that had water and sewer. That's what I'd like that to say.
So, I mean, this isn't, the minutes aren't intended to be a, verbatim record of
It's
this.
hardly verbatim. I didn't get into the traffic study. I didn't get into all the other things. The main issue, and one of their main reasons, which they spoke to us about, was how cost-effective that shovel-ready property was for them. When questioned about other properties that were already zoned high-density residential, they said, well, we want to be there.
Okay,
I think that's an
so maybe what we could say is what you had, and then say comma, and various other reasons.
That would be fine with me.
So,
Reflecting the fact that there's more than just that.
I think that.
So let's make sure Janice got that down.
Right.
Yes,
She'll have to
please.
read it back to you.
Okay, we want to amend Brenda Frederickson's testimony to note that the location was more cost-effective for them as it already has water and sewer. Is that correct?
You start with applicant responded. Okay. Attractive as this particular location was more cost-effective for the applicant because it already had water and sewer and utilities.
Along with various other reasons.
Right, you can add that in
Yeah,
too, but
yeah.
these were the ones they stated to the commission.
Okay, so we're amending Brenda Frederickson's statement to show that the location was more cost-effective.
Why don't you start reading at the
Okay.
beginning of the second sentence?
Sorry,
Yeah, it'll be
working back
clearer
up.
then.
Thank
Okay.
you, Madam Chair.
Amending Brenda Frederickson's testimony to, applicant responded that other properties are not as attractive as this particular location because this one already has water and sewer and other various reasons.
No, water, sewer, and utilities.
Water, sewer.
So my suggestion would be, if you guys are all amicable to this, to just have Commissioner Taylor provide the proposed amendments, and then they just be added to the minutes.
It's as simple as this. There's no reason to waste time. I think you have
I
it
can
now.
pick it up off the tape
That's fine.
also.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other adjustments or concerns about the July minutes? Okay, so all in favor of approving the July minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next thing is approval of the November 30th minutes. Could I have a motion and a second before we, and then we can talk about it?
I move to accept the November 30th minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Tel and seconded by Paula to approve the November 30th, 2017 minutes. I did find a couple of typos. So on page 10 of 17, under Bill Malloy's testimony, down towards the bottom, the end of the third line, property was looked into being, I believe, rather than locked into being.
That's great.
Do you see what I'm talking?
Yes, ma'am. I believe he said locked into being the location for the pool.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I guess that would make sense, wouldn't it? Okay. Okay, okay. Then at the very end, under the staff report, new community, yeah,
What page are you on?
11 of 17,
I
Thank you.
see that.
yeah,
Yeah, I saw that.
understand, yeah. Is there anything else?
Yes, Madam Chair. On page 8, under action items, public hearing to consider rezoning property located at 1350 Glenwood. I declared by law that I had ex parte communications with the applicant. They were allowed to speak at this meeting on July 20th. I wanted that added into the record. And I think it should read that June Jones has heard testimony from various parties on the subject. Tel Jensen has heard. Did you have various testimony, or was it just your July 20th interaction with the applicant?
Yeah.
So
So
it was, three of us declared our ex parte discussion, which is required by law. And so I want the record to reflect that accurately.
Can you give me the wording?
other commissioners declare that we're all in this room.
It was a public
They
meeting.
can't, they don't have to speak to the
July
audience.
20th was a public meeting.
They're all public meetings.
You guys shouldn't be asking the planning commission questions. This is a
I'm sorry, can you help me with the wording on that? I'm not following exactly what you're saying.
Shall I just stop after the meeting and we do it then? Would that be
That
okay?
would be fine.
Okay, let's move
Thank
on.
you.
So we can move to approve with corrections?
Okay, so it has been, we have a motion that has been seconded to approve the November 30th minutes with corrections. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So now we will go to the rules of procedure.
What about the agenda?
What about it?
Do we need to?
I think we do.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Is that on here? Okay. Sorry. Yes, I skipped the consent item to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve this agenda for December 21st?
I move we approve the agenda for December 21st.
I second.
It's been moved by Paula, seconded by Connie to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, so it seems to me easiest just to go through this section by section and see if there's anything that needs to be discussed. So I presume there's no problem with the name. Under meetings, there's no problem with the location, I assume? Anyone? Okay, the date and time, we've added the part about opening it half hour prior to the scheduled meeting time.
That's good.
Okay. We've made a change to rescheduling meetings for the holidays. Discretion of the commission. Okay.
Good.
Special meetings. Do we have any? When we get down to the section that says joint meetings, I think it's not quite correct to say that the Planning Commission will aspire to host a joint meeting. I see that as the city council hosting us, really. It's the
Because it's their meeting.
Yeah, the city council is the one, I think, that determines, or in this case, the mayor has asked for it, but it's more of the city council's purview than the planning commission's purview.
Sure.
So I would like to say something more along the lines of the planning commission will be available for joint meetings.
I like that.
Does anybody have any problems with that?
No, I think that's good.
Good call.
Okay. Does anybody have any other concerns with anything on this page?
I do.
Mhm.
Okay, at the bottom, it says page 1 of 5. Under organization of the planning commission, I have kind of a point of information question. Is it state law, Brad, that the planning commission is 5 members? Or is there, I mean, or is that, can that be changed?
It can be changed by the community. It's really up to the community.
Okay.
Ideally on boards and commissions, you want an odd number, so you don't have.
Oh,
necessarily-
absolutely,
yeah.
but I was thinking you could have 3 or something.
You could have 13. Yeah, I mean, there's like, I can't remember which jurisdiction, maybe it's King County. They have a very large commission. So.
I'm not proposing, I was just curious to see if,
Backing up a little bit to the meeting notices and agenda, was it Mary had suggested that there might be some issue with 2 weeks advance notice?
Mary Rip in her thing, her handout?
Yeah. Which, it's, 2 weeks seems like a good number. It seems better than 1 week to me, but it sounded like maybe
Well, it
that would
has
be really
2 weeks.
difficult. Yeah, no, I know. But
I
I
like that.
just wanted to make sure that it was
Okay,
manageable
when you say
for
written,
staff.
when you say written notice, does that include the agenda? Because I can see you might not always know the agenda by
Right,
that
right.
early.
I think it's just notice of the written notice that the planning commission is, going to be held that night. So I don't think it's intended to include your packet and everything. Those are due 7 days prior to your meeting.
Okay.
Right. You okay?
So therefore, there's probably not any problem with 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think you have to realize this is not being codified unless ultimately you and the council decide they want to codify it in Article 2 of your municipal code. But certainly, these are things that you want to happen as a commission. It helps you to run a more effective meeting and commission.
Okay.
Are we on page 205 now?
Okay, so page 14 of 17?
Madam Chair?
Oh, sorry, was you still about?
No.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
just,
yeah.
okay. On the top line, it says, Planning Commission shall meet residency requirements per the Woodland Municipal Code. I would like that code cited. I think that would just clear up a lot of confusion, so I would really like the citation there.
You mean out of municipal code?
Just
Yeah.
the number.
Yeah,
Just say what it is.
yeah. I don't know. I'll find out and we can put it in there.
Yeah, does that mean just the number or
One of
copy
the
them?
things that, just to consider, you might just say, for example, the planning commission is discussed in Article 2 of your municipal code, as opposed to saying Article 2 section, because if those sections change and things, you have to come back and change this. So if you just say residency requirements as prescribed in Article 2.
But, here's the issue. I was actually turned down for residency requirements, and all I got was according to Woodland Municipal Code, so I'm quite the regulatory specialist. I couldn't find where it said, I really want to know what the code says.
Yeah, I'll see if it spells it out specifically in.
So you just put, if it's Woodland Municipal Code 175.08.3, it's fine.
You know what's funny is though, I think we discussed this before, and I had, after the first meeting, I had questioned where the residency requirements were, and I'm not sure that the municipal code is specific about that. I think that it goes back to state law, and so I need to look into that.
Whatever it is, I want it cited, because, there's a lot of confusion about this, and there's a
Sure.
lot of talk, and
Sure.
I would just like to know.
So Brad's point about how numbers change on these things, do we want some kind of number, or do we want, quoting what it actually says?
Well, I think what I would do is I would probably find it and we'd just cite it. If the number's fine, you just need to be aware that you might have to come back someday.
And change it, yeah,
If it changes.
okay.
It's not too terrible.
Okay, I have a couple, can I just get my things on this
Keep going,
page?
yeah.
All right, so under duties of the chairperson and vice chair, I would like language inserted in here that says essentially that the chair is responsible for reviewing the agenda for correctness prior to the dissemination to the planning commission. Maybe that's too wordy, but
What does that mean?
That means that if they prepare an agenda, you as chair need to look over and make sure it's correct. Because some of these minutes things have been going on since June, and if you were looking at these things, you could catch them. We could expedite our meeting if you looked at them and said, okay, this looks right. See what I mean?
Okay, so you're just talking about
The agenda.
what's there, what's not there, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I mean, I've run large boards on $10 million foundations as chair. It was my job to work with whomever to review the agenda and make sure that it was as correct as it could possibly be for the board members.
Some places do it, and others don't. It's entirely up to you. You can certainly do that. No, at the last city I worked in, our chair was very diligent about, at least, she didn't necessarily approve the agenda because that's the commission's job the night of, but she would certainly provide feedback on that.
And that's really, I'm not trying to put a burden on you. I'm just saying, we approve the agenda, but if you could coordinate with staff as chair to make sure it addresses things, I think it would be helpful and expedite our meeting.
Well, I mean, I don't have any particular objections to doing that.
It's just, I mean, it adds one more step, but doesn't seem like a huge.
I mean, we've been having these issues lately. I mean, I don't remember that it's been such an issue before, but that doesn't mean it can't keep happening, so.
Well, anyway, would you
Yeah.
please insert language or something for that? Okay, the next thing is, and this is kind of a point of information, Brad, under motions and voting, and I just need some clarification here, and I'm not objecting, I'm just seeking clarification. All members of the Planning Commission may make and vote on motions to recommend approval with conditions, or denial of any development proposal or amendment. Okay, so then it says on page 15, the chairperson shall vote in the event of a tie vote of the other members present. A tie vote means the motion fails, a member may abstain from voting. So it seems like it's kind of a strange dichotomy there where it says one time everybody can vote and then it says, so could you please clarify that?
If I knew why it was there, I might be able to.
Well, again, this is, who knows when this was, when this was written.
I think to fix it, you would just strike the language on page 15 and 17, if your chair is going to vote as it, and as I think they should, because they're part of that, they make the quorum of 5, so you
See,
don't
I
wanna-
think so too.
Yeah, I would just strike that out of that.
Yeah, I agree.
So just strike that.
Just strike that.
Okay.
Can you tell me where that was?
It is on the second paragraph. It just says, Planning Commission members must be present to vote on motions. Proxy votes are not considered. And then it says, the chairperson shall vote in the event of a tie.
Yeah, I think
So
that's,
just strike that.
Anything else?
I have some things on 15, but did
Okay,
anybody else have anything
Yeah,
on 14?
on 14, up at the top, under election of officers, which we said would happen in January, and shoot, I guess I didn't bring the minutes with me, but I thought we had talked, according to the minutes, about did we talk about a one-year term or a two-year term?
I thought we
I'm
did.
confused now.
I also thought we had
It was a
agreed on
1
it.
year.
too.
Yeah.
I thought it was 1 year.
I thought 2 years. I remember June saying, the reason I remember is because June said, well, you need 2 years just to, 1 year just to get your feet under you. And then
Yeah.
really,
well, I don't ever make mistakes. So it could be that it's entirely up to the commission. It was 2 years prior. Yeah, it's entirely up to the commission. If you guys want it to be 2 years, that's fine.
I remember it being a 2-year term, and if a commissioner chose to resign from that position, that was fine.
Yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of what I remember.
Yeah.
I kind of like 2 years.
I think
I'm
it,
fine with that.
I think it was 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it certainly makes sense to strike out that part in that same paragraph at the end about the vacancy, because, yeah, it is the mayor who appoints.
Right, but I think I talked to Brian about this last month. And I think as you changed it, it makes more sense now, because it's talking about just an officer either resigning or being removed. So it's saying we would, if an officer is no longer an officer for some reason, we'll replace that officer. We're not going to replace a member of the planning commission.
Oh, okay.
We're just going to elect a new.
A new
We have
chair or
the
vice chair.
authority to do it.
Right. Well, we have the authority to elect a new.
Right, but I'm
Chair,
saying this
chair.
has to do with
Yeah.
officers, not.
Yeah, this is about officers, which
So
is.
this language
which
is
our-
fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay, anything else on page 14? All right, page 15.
Go ahead.
I just saw a typo in paragraph B of public hearing procedures, right after the struck through, on either side of.
Right.
Struck through chairperson of.
There's
Just a couple of those. Nothing.
The.
Serious. The
Right.
definite.
You see what,
Thanks, the.
where you have chairperson in blue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Great
all
band.
said.
Great band that I really enjoyed, but you
Yeah.
never know what it was intended.
Madam Chair, I have something a
Mhm.
little bit further up the page.
Okay.
Okay. Under conflict of interest and appearance of fairness, I thought it was important that, Bill Ealing wrote all of the members of the Planning Commission a letter on the appearance of fairness in land use matters. And I think it's important to include language on the ex parte communications, because that's a fundamental, and it's required by law. So I would like to see language from his letter to the Planning Commission inserted in there, because you have to, by law, you have to declare them. So I just think that would make us stronger, and it would get some boundaries and let everybody know. I'd like you to take a look at it, Brad, and then maybe bring it back to us, but there is, the date on that letter is June 2nd, 2017, and I can leave my copy with you if you would like.
Actually, probably so, because I think Commissioner Jones handed me 3 of those 4 pages. Is that a 4-page letter?
This is a 2-page letter from Ealing to the entire
No,
Planning Commission.
but did you also submit one on the 2nd of June?
I don't know what you're talking about, but
Oh.
I'm just saying, I'm talking about conflict of
Sure.
interest, because there's a definition of conflict of interest. There's also a real definition of appearance of fairness, there's a definition of bias, and there's a definition of ex parte communications. And I think these things are important to include in these procedures, because this is the framework by which we operate.
Yeah, I'll take that letter from you.
All right, listen, can I just hand it to you
Sure.
now? Just. Anyway, I need to move, it's so cold in here, I can't hardly. Thank you. Okay, I have, under B, under public hearing procedures, now, Madam Chair, I understand why this is here, but there was a number of people that were upset when it says, when speakers should keep their statements to the issue at hand and avoid repeating information already presented. I mean, a lot of people had the same issue at the public hearing, and I think there should be allowed to say, I agree with the previous, there's got to be in there, because I know there's a significant number of people that said, well, traffic's an issue with me. And if you heard some of the comments from the audience today, they were saying, that's the same thing for me. So we have to, I'm not sure, I'm wondering if you could say that in public hearing, but not have it so definitive in the procedures.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the script for that, it does say that if you...
I don't have I didn't know we ever decided on a script. I
Yeah,
have
it
a
was
bunch of
just-
scripts.
It was the script that I... that
Yeah, and I didn't bring it with me, yeah.
Which is fine, I can send it to you
Because
guys again.
because I didn't, well, okay.
There's no reason you would have need to
Right.
to bring it.
I
So
wasn't,
I'm not-
yeah, I wasn't anticipating what would
Right.
happen. I suppose this statement here is kind of like, aspirational, it's not,
Well, I'd like it modified, because here's the thing. We're getting more people at these meetings than we ever have. I think this is a good thing for the public process. And I don't want people to feel, now listen, I'm concerned about time too, but I don't want them to feel thwarted in expressing their opinion. So there has to be a way to let them say, well, and I agree with them, or I have the same traffic, da-da-da-da, make a brief statement. But people were upset that they didn't feel, because in the testimony, how it came out, because of the orders of the chair, and I truly understand, that's not a reflection on you, it doesn't look like the level of concern on some of these issues were adequately represented, because they were told that they could not mention anything that was mentioned before.
Well, actually, I think what Sharon said, and because this is what was written down for her to say, was that if you have something on the same subject, you could say, I agree wholeheartedly, and then, so that we know.
That wasn't conveyed.
are you talking about what happened tonight, or were you talking
No,
about what happened at the
no,
last
no,
meeting?
General, I'm
last-
talking at the
last
November
meeting.
30th meeting.
The last
Because
meeting.
I heard you prepare, and you're well within, that was the script.
It was a
But
script,
there's
yeah.
got to be a way, and I really think this really doesn't necessarily belong to this degree in these, our procedures, but, we need to open,
Well, as you say, tonight, people were saying the same thing a lot about, traffic, and I was letting them say it.
and that's good, but there was a bunch of frustrated people, I understand. I've been kind of under the weather, so I haven't been out, but that they were only when...
But they were frustrated by the last meeting,
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah, so I'd like us to consider a way to let people express themselves, not go on ad nauseum about, this traffic issue, but they could say, I also have problems with traffic, and then they move on. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, again, so, yes, it does make sense, and oftentimes you hear that. I used to work with a hearings officer that was really good at that, at moving people along, because, I realize this was controversial and you have some, but, try and put a petroleum contaminated soil site in the middle of a city or something, and you're going to have people out the room, and you give everybody 4 minutes, you're going to be there till 2 or 3 in the morning. You have to move your meeting along. You have to allow people to
I
say, and you,
understand that.
as a chair, what you could do is if they start talking about that same issue, say, after they finish, just after they politely say, okay, we heard from 2 speakers now that traffic is a concern. We understand that traffic is a concern, and if there are others that have the
Different.
same thought on that, please just mention that I have the same concerns with
That's
traffic.
exactly what
But
I
it's
want.
really you administering that, or you're working through the crowd that way. And then just ask, we've noted, and this is simply the commission, we've noted that traffic is a concern for many of you, and you're welcome to just repeat that I have the same concerns with traffic. If there is something specifically related that wasn't mentioned in that discussion, you might let them talk about it. Like if they want to talk about a specific intersection that is affected by it, you might want to let them do it if nobody else did it. It's just, it gives you more information to think about in
Okay.
your decision.
But I think we could,
It seems like the language that's there leaves plenty of room for that, though, to me.
And that script was only given because we didn't have anything, and I really felt like you had to have a script. I think there's some requirements that you have to have a script to lay the groundwork or a foundation of how you're going to run your meeting. Because if you don't do that, you'll get people droning on and on and on. The other thing, and I would just mention this, I may not be before you guys again because, you know, you're hiring somebody that'll be here, and I may come with him, but in my observation, you guys need to remember that you're a team, that you're out there working and considering this. You may not all agree on the same things, but you do have to work together, and you cannot let the audience talk to you. You have to maintain order, and you simply have to let, if people start talking to you, you don't have to respond to them, and they're going to get upset, and you can just simply say, if you want to speak, please come to the mic, or you know, something like that. But you don't have to talk back to the audience. You know, I think that what you said tonight, Commissioner Watts was great, and that we've noted that. We've noted that, and sure, but they can't cross-examine you. That's not their. I mean, you know, it's nice. Certainly, the public. A lot of the public comes here because they want their questions answered, and maybe they just didn't feel like they got them answered to the degree that they wanted them answered again. But there are other avenues for them to do that. Staff's always down there. They were welcome to come and talk to staff about how those things were addressed. Traffic was in fact addressed. They did provide a traffic study with the revised submittal. So they could come and look at that stuff. And I just think that it's not the public's fault that they don't work in this every day. I couldn't go to somebody else's business and understand their job. And so we have to do the best that you can to keep your meetings organized and moving forward, and still trying to at least point the public in the direction to find the information that they might be looking for. So after all of that, you can just, you know, state that this is going before the city council, and you did this, but you might have just at the end do it again. This is going before the city council again on the 15th. So if these concerns that you've raised tonight in your public testimony, I would take them to the council and raise them there as well.
I thought you just nailed that. That was just great. So that was good. How about this? Under B, speakers should try to keep their statements to the issues at hand.
Should aspire.
Yeah, but, you know, they should try.
Yeah.
But I think the importance of getting people here and speaking, I think, is so valuable in terms of the long-term success of Woodland. So I don't like it that...
I know, you know, to some extent, I'm reluctant to jump on people and tell them to shut up.
Right. So, I don't know. I mean...
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it seems like there's a lot of wiggle room in the language that's here, and I don't think most folks are gonna read this and say, "Oh shoot, I should keep my statement." You know,
Well, I don't know. Given the way it's going now, yeah, I wouldn't assume.
The public has cried out to us about this issue. I just think we need to have something not so definitive in here that allows, you know, you can control the situation, Madam Chair. I mean, you've done a good job, but we just need to, you know,
And I think this is perfect. It says the chairperson may limit input to avoid duplication. It doesn't say is going to, you know, rule with an iron fist and say no repeating anything.
Well, speakers should keep their statements to the issue at hand and avoid repeating information already repeated. And
that doesn't say they can't say, oh, you know, I totally agree with what that fellow said before.
Well,
right. I totally appreciate what you're saying, and I think I agree with that sentiment as well. That, you know, we want to do everything we can to encourage public input, not shut it down.
so then,
right?
you know, to appease the public, couldn't we just insert two words and say, or attempt? Speakers should attempt, or, you know, just try to keep their statements at the issue at hand.
I mean, to me, like, just from like a language standpoint, should sort of already include that, right? If they had to do it, it would say shall.
Well, I was at the last council meeting, and it was brought up that they were, I didn't speak up because I wasn't part of the conversation, but it was brought up that they were told they couldn't discuss, there was sort of blown out of proportion, and, you know, they were complaining to the council about the way the commission was handling that they were told that they couldn't repeat the same thing and things like that, and it was disturbing. And yet nobody, I don't know that they're allowed on the council to say this, like, well, you know, we have certain rules in the planning commission that have to be followed, and that's one of them in order to, there was no discussion, there was just one big complaint, so.
Sure. I'm not sure it's a hard and fast rule anywhere in anything. You know, it's just a, hey, we want to keep this moving forward. If you have an issue and somebody's already said it, we've heard it. And, you know, by you saying it again, doesn't make it any different than the last person saying it. You've already heard it. But it's entirely up to you. It's not, I don't think you want to necessarily write that into rules anywhere. Because, yeah, I mean, you're going to find instances where people have more specific concerns about traffic that may not have been relayed by the last speaker that they agree with. I think the gentleman that came up, Mr. Stock, did a fine job of just saying, I agree with everything he said, but I had these other things I'd like to add.
Yeah, that
So
was
maybe
perfect.
it's a script issue.
Yeah, I think so.
And we should reiterate
Take that
beforehand that they
Yeah,
have
let's
a
just
certain
delete
amount of
that
time.
sentence.
Just
And
strike
the-
the speakers. Yeah, I mean, because it's really, these are your rules, not, you know,
Mhm.
Just strike that.
Because, yeah, that leaves in, you know, may limit input to the
And that's
Yeah.
really what is needed.
And may is conditional, yeah. Anything else on page 15? Okay, page 16. One thing I'd like to have somewhere at the end when it's adopted, you know, so this was adopted this month, this date. What we have here dated this day of March, and of course that the March would, that date would change too. I'm presuming that is the date that particular person signed?
That is the date the person signed.
yeah.
But it does have some, so we have two things going on here. We have spaces for everybody, which looks like it's the date that we approve these procedures. But should there be a place for, like, when a new person comes on the commission, where it notes when they sign it? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Well, and also, I think that maybe we should have something in there, and I didn't, you know, that we reviewed these, have a specified period that, you know, the planning commission will review these on a,
take a look at it every couple years or something.
yeah, every 2 years or something, because things change.
Yeah. Let's see. Would that go under amendments? Not exactly. Does that have to be a new section?
Yeah, you could do 8, just like periodic review.
Yeah.
Is that word supposed to be add amendments?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good
It's
catch.
amendments, not,
Periodic review. These rules are subject to periodic review by the commission.
So
Should be reviewed at least.
do we want to set a period of review?
Yeah, I
2
think,
years?
I think
years
your
sounds-
language was great.
You can set it for 2 years, and you could say annually, because then that way you, as the commissioners, have to review it annually.
I think
So
that's a
that you
good
know-
idea.
So then you know that
Well-
the newer commissioners have looked at it, right?
Well, that's true. That means they have actually read it, yeah. Yeah,
2 years seems all right.
yeah.
Well, Yeah, 2 years seems all right. I mean, 1 year is nice because we could say like, we're going to do this the last meeting of the year, and then we would just know that. We wouldn't have to think about, is this a year or not? Or, I mean, 2 years seems like plenty to me.
Well, I kind of like the idea of doing it in December and just having
Just making it, we do it every year, we take a look at it. open it up.
So would that mean we would actually, well, I guess it depends if something has changed or not, but,
You can
I mean,
always change it.
it's just something to spend more time on, you know?
Yeah, I don't go, you guys go either way, I don't care.
What do you think, Paula? 1 year or 2 years?
I like 1 year.
What do you like, Tal, too?
But that's because I'm
I can go either
older
way,
and
yeah.
I can't retain things more than a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these are the sort of things that people, don't really pay attention to unless
Yeah.
they're
I mean,
forced to.
And I feel like, if we do it more regularly, like this is the first time we've opened this up since I've been on the commission.
Oh,
So-
me, I've been on longer, and yeah.
Yeah, so I think, if we do it, if we did it every year, like it wouldn't be such an undertaking every time, right? It'd probably be pretty minor changes.
Theoretically, yeah.
And it should be pretty quick.
Mhm.
So if I put, the procedures are subject to periodic review and should be re-adopted by the commission annually.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's,
And then
I'd go for that.
Okay.
All right, so you'll make changes and send it back, okay.
I've got to say one thing. Listening to the people talking about the traffic, I live right, I know they were looking, I don't know if they were looking at me when they said if anyone lives in that area. But, and I'm a traffic watcher because I was born in New York City and I love traffic. To me, it seems like there's hardly any traffic at all. And
Compared to
I
New
know
York
if you're
City.
driving truck, it probably seems like a lot more. Just one car probably is in their way, but it does, the only times are during the peak hours, like when you're going to work or when you're coming home from work. But that's just something that everyone has to deal with, even if you're on the freeway,
Yeah, and like fixing the freeway is not really a city
Yeah.
function.
Yeah,
That's gonna
there's
be an
nothing we
ODOT
can do
function.
about
Actually, I've heard that, I think it was Aaron Thoney one meeting I was in, said, if they would just kind of make a line division for that they're supposed to go this way or that way. But that's not something we can do.
I know, that's not our purview,
Yeah,
but, yeah. so-
But, I think, traffic is something we need to consider, because that is a land use issue.
Absolutely, traffic and land use are very closely tied.
I think,
On the other hand, if you didn't have traffic, then it would mean we're a dead town.
Yeah.
So-
No, but I think, to that point, here's a real important, issue with that. I didn't agree with their peak traffic issues anyway, and I don't want to get into it now because I'm fading fast. But that's not, that doesn't, depend, they can sell this project. They could sell it to Longview Housing, they could sell this as soon, and you may not be getting,
What they advertise you're going to get.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's happened before, let me tell you.
okay, are we ready to go to staff report?
Do we have a staff report?
I honestly, I have only been working in Woodland 1 day a week for the past several weeks, so just no news to really report other than we have a few things. The Port of Woodland is very active right now. They're looking at doing a couple of developments. Columbia Precast is looking at adding a wash station and some things out there. ARCO is finally getting off the ground and getting ready to submit permits for their up on Sherman Way that they've gone through. So the next thing that'll come to you is the Sequoia Park subdivision. So we provided red line comments to them last week, and they'll be working on those to get them So we won't bring that before you until we have a bond in place and making sure that the red line comments are addressed and it's ready to go before you. Yeah, I don't really have.
Hey, I have a question. I would really like to see the code enforcement. We were getting them for a while, all the complaints and stuff. And, that has to do with, we had the code enforcement officers speak to us. But I'd really like to see what the issues are in the city. That has to do
Well,
with our long-term plan.
Right, yeah, you might want to say that, like once a year, you get that.
No,
sort
I
of-
want to see it,
Every-
at least once a quarter.
Yeah, I mean, that only happened because we asked for it at,
But
Yeah.
I think, I want to see it. I'm a commissioner. It has to do with what we're doing in this city. It's under community development.
certainly that would be something to discuss with the, the new person. Yeah, it's a,
Yeah, our new director. Yeah, that's,
yeah, but
more
you're
information
right,
about
it is kind of to see what's happening, yeah.
ear to the ground.
What's commission reports on this agenda?
Just if you have any general comments.
Oh, that was that.
Okay, so it's like for the good of the order? Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to know, is it actually possible for us to rescind a decision? I mean, they were asking us to rescind. I don't know how that works.
Right, at this point, I've never seen it done. I suppose you could, as a commission, if you voted to rescind if you made a motion and voted to rescind that recommendation, you could certainly send that to the council as part of their deliberations. They could consider it, but it's not something that I've been aware of. Typically, what I've seen is that the council gets to council is not happy with everything they have, and they will remand it back to
Yeah,
you
yeah.
for further consideration.
That's happened before, yeah.
And something that was brought up, and again, two things. I don't work for the city, so I was not, I was a consultant, so I was not comfortable writing a recommendation from staff. And I think I've been clear with people that have talked to me about this from day one. I could have written findings either way, for or against. I think this was one of those that is right down the middle, and there's reasons for it and there's reasons definitely against it. But the other thing I was going to say is that when I told Pete and the mayor that I would help out with this, I specifically said that I would not work on policy because, again, I'm not with the city. So the gentleman about the flag lot and things like that, we're just simply I'm not hired to do that kind of work. I was just hired to keep things moving, and I didn't want to. I could bury me for months. So,
Brad, who wrote the recommendation to the city council?
Well, so there's not a recommendation. It's the same recommendation. So now the recommendation becomes the planning commission's recommendation. So the recommendation from the planning commission was to approve it. So that becomes part of the staff report to the city council. Planning commission has recommended approval of the application.
Okay.
They'll get my staff report, and with it, they'll get the recommendation from the planning commission, and they'll get the same materials, and then it will be up to them to. It's called a de novo hearing, so they'll hear de novo hearing. So when it gets to the city council, it's just like as if it has not happened before you at all. So they're going to reconsider everything that everybody else is. Anybody can come up with anything. So.
Well, before we adjourn, it sounds like we might see you again, Brad, but if we don't,
Yeah.
I'd like to say thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yes.
you've been very helpful.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job under some, somewhat adverse circumstances. So,
Yes.
I really appreciate your help.
Sure, thanks.
You too, Janice, but you're going to be around for a while, so.
We hope. She's not just,
Janice, I'll email you the language of the word.
Thank you, that would be helpful.
I'm not contagious, you guys, at all. I've been
Are you-
already diagnosed. I'm not.
no, yeah,
not
but
contagious.
you were having a real coughing fit there, you're okay?
So I apologize.
Well,
I wanted to come to the meeting knowing I wasn't contagious because June was gone and everything. So I wanted to move things forward.
Okay,
I
so.
make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
And, it'd be nice if it met meeting here. No, here's the fact. I mean, the city council meetings are nice and warm, but I shouldn't have to wear a jacket.
It might be partly because you're sick,
Yeah,
because I'm not
I feel
cold.
very-
I'm not that cold.
I think it's because you're sick.
Jessica turned the heat up when she was here.
Let's not forget January 8th.
Oh, yeah. January 8th.
January 8th, our
Fun time. Yep.
See you on the way.
meeting with the council.
There.
Okay, I'll shoot you something, well,